Welcome, everyone. Today we are continuing our dive into the history of Pan-Africanism, a story of foresight, unity, and enduring dreams. If Pan-Africanism had its spiritual and intellectual birth in diaspora, Kwame Nkrumah, like Nnamdi Azikiwe, was another political figure who brought it back home to the African continent and tried to make it real in political terms. Nkrumah's journey is emblematic of a Pan-African dream in motion. It's a reflection, the manifestation of the Pan-African dream in motion. Born in the British colony of the Gold Coast, like Zeke, Nkrumah also studied in the United States, incidentally, at Lincoln University, but also at University of Pennsylvania, where he encountered the teachings of Marcus Garvey, W.E.B. Du Bois, and George Padmore. Now, this exposure shaped Nkrumah's worldview profoundly. In the US, he witnessed racism firsthand, but also learned the power of Black unity and global struggle. Later, in London, when he moved to London, he became active in Pan-African circles and co-organized that all-important Fifth Pan-African Congress in Manchester in 1945. That Congress that marked a shift from theory to liberation planning. When Nkrumah returned to the Gold Coast, he didn't return just as a nationalist. He came back as a Pan-Africanist revolutionary. In 1957, under his leadership, Ghana became the first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence from colonial rule. And he declared, and I quote, "The independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of Africa." This statement wasn't just rhetorical. He meant every word of it. Nkrumah began providing training resources, diplomatic support for anti-colonial struggles across the continent, from Algeria to Angola, Kenya to Guinea-Bissau. He made every effort to support African countries, other African countries to get their independence. But what truly set Nkrumah apart was his bold and urgent vision for a United States of Africa. He really believed African countries were too small, too economically dependent, and too divided to survive in a world dominated by powerful blocs like the United States, the Soviet Union, and former colonial powers. So he proposed a bold solution: a continental government with a shared army, currency, and a foreign policy. Imagine if that dream had come true. How different might the world look today? We really need to pause and reflect. What kind of global impact would a United States of Africa have had? Not just for Africans on the continent, but for people of African descent everywhere. I'd really like you to share your thoughts. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what a United States of Africa, if it had succeeded at the time it was proposed, would mean to the world today. So please share your ideas in our comment section. I'll be looking out for them. However, this vision that Nkrumah had was highly controversial at the time. I mean, we can only imagine. Many African leaders, though sympathetic to the idea of their country's independence and to some extent unity, were reluctant to give up their newly acquired sovereignty and, of course, their individual political powers. A lot of them were, you know, were insistent on protecting their political power. So while leaders like Leopold Senghor of Senegal favored a gradualist or regional approach, would rather focus on economic and cultural cooperation before political integration, whereas others rejected the idea of a United States of Africa outright. And apparently, some of those African leaders feared Nkrumah's push for rapid unification. They thought it was idealistic or even imperialistic, especially as Ghana began to experience internal unrest and economic strain, mostly engineered by Britain and other European powers who dreaded the wrath of a united Africa. Nevertheless, Nkrumah was not completely alone in his Pan-African convictions. A few other African leaders also championed Pan-African ideals in their own different ways. People like Ahmed Sekou Toure of Guinea, who was a staunch supporter of African independence and who famously rejected de Gaulle's proposal to keep Guinea under French control. He partnered closely with Nkrumah and was an early advocate for African solidarity. There was also the Mwalimu Julius Nyerere of Tanzania. Mwalimu promoted Ujamaa and African socialist philosophy grounded in communalism, and which is quite different from communism. Promoted this notion of Ujamaa, which was grounded in communalism and self-reliance. He believed deeply in African unity and also emphasized cultural decolonization. Patrice Lumumba of Congo was another one, a fierce nationalist and Pan-Africanist who called for African control of African resources. I mean, these were such profound positions, that because those positions were not allowed to take root, African countries and Africans continues to suffer. Lumumba's assassination was orchestrated by Western interests, and it was a devastating and deliberate blow to Pan-African hope and aspiration. There was also Modibo Keita of Mali, another leader who worked with Nkrumah to form the Ghana-Guinea-Mali Union. And this was an early experiment in intra-African cooperation, which was unfortunately short-lived because, again, the former colonial masters of those countries were determined it would not succeed. Now, despite Nkrumah's eventual overthrow in 1966 coup, which was widely backed by Western powers, a memorable quote from Nkrumah, which is still relevant today, that I'd like to share. We face neither east or west. We face forward. Now, that's what he hoped a united Africa would do. Face forward together with dignity, strength, and self-determination, rather than being used as pawns by political, religious, or other external forms of distraction, either from the West or the East, as is the case today. These were things that people like Nkrumah foresaw and tried to guard against, but which unfortunately they were not allowed to do. Thanks for watching. Please join me next time as we continue this journey. Remember, the Sankofa bird looks back, not to dwell in the past, but to bring the best of it forward. Let's carry it forward together.